The Collaboration, Chapter 4, Bad, Part 2. The following morning, the president of the film chamber announced that The Rise of Catherine the Great was being taken out of circulation in Germany because it endangered public order. The representatives of the American studios in Berlin were skeptical. "It is clear that such danger can be supplied readily at any time and in a moment's notice," wrote one American trade commissioner. "It is not clear whether it was deliberately arranged in order to make it appear as if public opinion were responsible," wrote another. And Fritz Strongholt, whose subtitled version of The Prizefighter and the Lady was scheduled to open at the same theater 8 days later, decided to take preemptive action. On March 15th, he wrote to the German Foreign Office to explain the severe consequences that would result from the banning of The Prizefighter and the Lady in Germany. First, MGM would give up its Berlin office, for it was not in the habit of conducting business in this way. As a result, around 160 employees would lose their jobs, and the German company that manufactured MGM's film prints would lose its biggest customer. Second, MGM was 100% owned by Loews Incorporated, and a very considerable portion of Loews was owned by William Randolph Hearst. Up to this point, the Hearst press had regularly attacked France and had treated the new regime in Germany with objectivity and good favor. Third, if The Prizefighter and the Lady were banned, there would automatically be massive reprisals against German films and German sportsmen in America. This would be a great shame, for up to this point, MGM had always been anxious to maintain good relations between Germany and America. The studio had secured distribution deals for German pictures in the United States and had produced Gabriel over the White House, which the German government had recognized as politically valuable. If the premiere of the Max Baer film did not go ahead as planned, Germany would stand to lose a lot more than MGM. Fritz Strongholt had one more trick up his sleeve. One of his employees happened to be the nephew of the German foreign minister Konstantin von Neurath. He must have made use of this contact, for at 11:30 the next morning, the foreign minister was on the phone with Joseph Goebbels. Here is an account of their conversation from the perspective of the foreign minister's assistant, Alexander Früher. Baron von Neurath stressed that the English version was approved without objection in January, and that a sudden belated ban would have such bad consequences, and would be such an insult to the organizers and the foreign press, that the matter would be known throughout the entire world within 2 hours. In reply to this statement, Reichsminister Goebbels said something which I didn't hear. From the further words of the foreign minister, however, it became clear that Reichsminister Goebbels had agreed to go ahead with the premiere, and that he would provide protection against any potential disturbance. When the phone call was over, the foreign minister called Alexander Früher over to his desk and asked him to carry out a couple of important assignments. First, he wanted him to meet with the chief censor, Dr. Seeger, under whose authority The Prizefighter and the Lady had initially been permitted. Then, he wanted him to report the results of the conversation to Fritz Strongholt of MGM. That afternoon, Früher visited Seeger, who had no qualms with The Prizefighter and the Lady, but who felt that Goebbels' guarantee of no violence could not be upheld. Früher explained that he would contact the police himself and instruct them to take the necessary. Früher replied that he would contact the police himself and instruct them to take the necessary precautions. Früher then called Fritz Strongholt to inform him of the results of his efforts. He said that he had spoken to the police and to the local Nazi Party leader, and that the evening's events would run smoothly. Nevertheless, the film chamber would undoubtedly issue a ban the next day, and the wisest move for MGM, and one involving no loss of prestige, would be to withdraw the picture from circulation the following morning. Früher said that the most he could obtain for the company was this brief respite. Strongholt had just one question for the assistant to the foreign minister. Why, he had asked, was Goebbels objecting to the film in the first place? Früher said that he had believed it had something to do with an insulting remark that Baer had made about Hitler. Strongholt was prepared for just this, and he directed Führer's attention to an article in the most recent edition of Der Angriff. Max Schmeling speaks with respect about his former opponent. He emphasizes that up until his return to Europe, they were the best of friends. Why then, the stupid claim that Baer said he would crush the representative of Hitler? Schmeling never heard anything like this when he was in America. If Goebbels' own newspaper was categorically denying the rumor about Baer, Stronghold said, then what was the problem? Führer replied that MGM could always provide any documentation to the authorities at a later date, but that, for the moment, the only course of action was to withdraw the film from circulation. The premiere of The Prizefighter and the Lady went ahead that night without any interruptions. At the end of the screening, the crowd responded with tumultuous applause, and the critics were deeply impressed. The reviewer for Der Angriff, H. Brandt, the same man who had written the perceptive review of Gabriel of the White House 2.5 weeks earlier, had only kind words for Max Baer. Baer, he said, gave a marvelous performance as a boxer who rapidly rose to stardom, even if he did have a few adulterous affairs on the side. This man was always a winner, whether as a boxer or as an actor, whether he put his efforts into chasing women or simply allowing himself to be surrounded by them. One of the only complaints about the film, in fact, was that it had not yet been dubbed into German. Why, the reviewer for the Völkischer Beobachter asked, instead of dubbing the picture, must the company resort to this careless procedure of printing German titles on the screen with the English sound, which is spoken at such a rapid tempo that the spectator's eyes miss half of the acting? In the future, please use either German language or nothing at all. Stronghold was encouraged by the reviews, and the following morning he did not pull The Prizefighter and the Lady out of circulation. To his surprise, the German authorities did not take any action either. The film was in its 13th consecutive day of sold-out showings at the Capitol Theater, and seemed likely to become one of the biggest hits of the year in Germany when the dubbed version finally came up for the review. Stronghold was not too worried at this point, for even if the picture were rejected, he could always appeal the decision to Seeger's Supreme Censorship Board. And even if Seeger then rejected it, the subtitled version would still bring in excellent returns. The meeting opened with the first ever screening of The Prizefighter Lady. The meeting opened with the first ever screening of The Prizefighter and the Lady in German. Then, The meeting opened with the first ever screening of The Prizefighter and the Lady in German. Then Arnold Bachmeister, the head of the regular censorship board, turned to the only invited guest, a representative from the propaganda ministry. "Do you object to the showing of this picture because it is not in the spirit of the new Germany?" he asked. "Because the main actor is the Jewish boxer, Max Baer?" "Yes," the representative replied. In the discussion that followed, Bachmeister said that the events in the film revolved around Max Baer, and that Max Baer had all... In the discussion that followed, Bachmeister said that the events in the film revolved around Max Baer, and that Max Baer had all the internal and external features of a Jew. The German public would inevitably recognize Baer as a typical representative of his race. It was bad enough, Bachmeister said, that the main character of the film was a Jew. The decisive point, though, was that despite his inherent moral defects, he was portrayed as a sports hero and moral victor. His victory took place not only inside the ring, but also outside it, with non-Jewish women. He grabbed them indiscriminately and slept with them, and his non-Jewish wife was so addicted to him that she forgave him every time. Such a portrayal could not be tolerated in the new Germany. Bachmeister therefore turned down MGM's application for the dubbed version of The Prizefighter and the Lady, and he ordered that the subtitle version, currently playing at the Capitol Theater, be taken out of circulation immediately. Stronghold was outraged. He called a press conference. Stronghold was outraged. He called a press conference and announced to 50 journalists that The Prizefighter and the Lady had been banned because the main actor was a Jew. His company stood to lose 350,000 Reichsmarks as a result. If the Nazis intended to ban all pictures containing Jews, then not only MGM, but all the American studios would be forced to leave the country. In that case, around 5,000 local employees would lose their jobs. MGM had already lodged an appeal with the highest censorship board in the country, and the other studios would be paying close attention to the outcome. In the days that followed, several high-ranking Nazi officials spoke out against the banning of The Prizefighter and the Lady. The Reich Ministry of Economics became heavily involved, and Foreign Minister Konstantin von Neurath wrote a concerned letter to Goebbels. Von Neurath reminded Goebbels of their earlier telephone conversation, and then stated his position in no uncertain terms. In view of the extraordinary influence that the American film industry exerts on our economy, we will have to deal with the most detrimental reactions from Washington if the lower censorship board's decision is upheld. The Americans think of the film as a cultural asset. The Americans think of film not as a cultural asset, but as a commodity, and the former ambassador Sherman emphasized a few years ago that it is one of their most significant exports. From this perspective, the uncertainty in this sector generated by the censor's decision will cast serious doubts on our reliability as a partner in a new trade agreement. After reiterating the basis of MGM's claim, the foreign minister urgently requested that Goebbels intervene in the upcoming meeting of Dr. Seeger's Supreme Censorship Board. 3 weeks later, the meeting took place. The proceedings began with a screening of the picture, followed by a summary of the plot. Then the lawyer for MGM gave several reasons for contesting the earlier decision. He first argued that The Prizefighter and the Lady neither glorified Max Baer nor made him superior to other people. Furthermore, even if German spectators did emerge from the film idealizing Baer, they would never think of him as a typical representative of his race. They would consider him merely an exception. Seeger refuted both of these claims. The entire film was a singular apotheosis for Max Baer, whose life and times serve as his principal content. Seeger refuted both of these claims. The entire film was a singular apotheosis. Seeger refuted both of these claims. The entire film was a singular apotheosis for Max Baer, whose life and times serve as its principal content, and whose fight at the end has all the sympathy of the public on his side. This committee believes that Baer is furthermore a particularly negroid type of Jew. When the claimant questions the determination of the committee, Seeger refuted both of these claims. The entire film was a singular Seeger refuted both of these claims. The entire film was a singular apotheosis for Max Baer, whose life and time served as its principal content, and whose fight at the end has all the sympathy of the public on his side. This committee believes that Baer is furthermore a particularly negroid type of Jew. When the claimant questions the determination of the committee that the German public will not consider Baer to be a typical representative of his race, he remains alone in this view. The MGM lawyer moved on. He turned to Baer's sexual relations with non-Jewish women, and he said that German feelings were not only hurt. The MGM lawyer moved on. He turned to Baer's sexual relations with non-Jewish women, and he said that German feelings were only hurt when relations between Jews and non-Jews took place in Germany. Since the film was set in America, it was not offensive in any way. Such relations between Jews and non-Jews are offensive to German feelings regardless of where they are set, Seeger replied. The German people have collectively adopted a hostile attitude towards Jews, and as numerous recent Such relations between Jews and non-Jews are offensive to German feelings regardless of where they are set, Seeger replied. The German people have collectively adopted a hostile attitude toward Jews, and as in which a Jew plays a leading role. In this matter, it makes no difference whether the Jew is of German or foreign origin, or whether the film is set in Germany or abroad. The MGM lawyer had just last one objection. Even if the authorities insisted on banning the dubbed version of the film, they had no basis for pulling the original version out of circulation as well. The inclusion of the original approved English version in the ban is not to be criticized, Seeger said. It is to be explained by the fact that in the time between the certification of the original version and its resubmission in dubbed version, The new film law became effective, which forbids pictures that harm National Socialist sensibility. After responding to this final objection, Seeger announced that no further appeals were possible, and he brought the meeting to a close. The upholding of the ban on The Prizefighter and the Lady changed the nature of the film censorship in the Third Reich. In the past, films had only ever been banned in Germany on account of objectionable content, a policy consistent with the policies of other nations. Now, films could also be banned of the racial origins of the members of the cast. The Nazis were applying their anti-Semitic views to the film selection process, a practice without precedent anywhere in the world. All this might have signaled the end of the Nazis' relationship with American studios. The Nazis had targeted one prominent Jew in Hollywood, and more cases would inevitably follow. Soon, business dealings between two groups would be unthinkable. The collaboration, wink wink, would come to an end. In fact, things turned out quite differently. Years later, Arnold Bachmeister wrote a memoir in which he explained the true meaning of the Prizefighter and the Lady decision. Of particular significance, he wrote, was the question of whether, and to what extent, the participation of Jewish artists in a film would necessitate a ban on harming of National Socialist sensibilities. When the American film The Prizefighter and the Lady was submitted to the board, with the Jewish boxer Max Baer in the leading role, I took the principal position that the mere participation of a Jewish artist did not justify a ban. A film should only be rejected if the artist were playing a lead role and, in addition, were well known to the German public. This restrictive interpretation seemed necessary to me out of practical considerations. If the interpretation of the ban had been any broader, barely a single foreign film could have shown in Germany. The banning of The Prizefighter and the Lady, in other words, was a pragmatic decision that balanced Nazi ideology with economic reality. The censors had merely intervened in an extreme case, a film that starred a well-known threatening Jew who had publicly criticized Hitler. There was no way that they could have rejected Hollywood's entire output, for that would have been disastrous for theater attendance in Germany. The Nazis were therefore not ending their relationship with the American studios. They were announcing the only way that the relationship would continue. But there was one more side to the Germans' decision. One final reason was that they could not possibly have stopped doing business with the studios at this particular point in time. If the Nazis had banned all American movies in Germany, then the representative in Los Angeles, the German consul... If the Nazis had banned all American movies in Germany, then the representative in Los Angeles, the German consul, George Gissling, would have lost all of his bargaining power. He would have no further basis for objecting to the production of anti-Nazi films in Hollywood. The Nazis needed to maintain friendly relations with at least a few of the studios, or else they almost certainly would have become the villains in the most popular form of entertainment the world had ever known. Hitler himself had been very clear about his priorities here. In a society fighting for its existence, he had said in Mein Kampf, propaganda acquires supreme importance, and all other considerations become secondary. In accordance with this precept, he was willing to sacrifice virtually anything to obtain the advantage in the field of propaganda. His film workers followed his example. They were prepared to permit most American movies starring Jewish actors in Germany if it meant that George Gissling could continue to exert his influence over the really important cases. So, in the end, the banning of The Prizefighter and the Lady was not the most significant moment in the Nazis' dealing with Hollywood. The Nazis simply did not consider the appearance of Jewish artists on the German screen to be anywhere near as pressing as the preservation of the German prestige in movies to be screened all around the world. On several occasions, the propaganda ministry explained this policy to the German press and issued clear instructions on what to say about the showing of Jewish pictures in Germany. Jewish writers, directors, and composers in foreign pictures must not be emphasized. At present, it is impossible to prevent the screening of all foreign pictures in which Jews have participated, due to the existing agreements. That, at least, was the Nazis' position. But there were two sides to the relationship, and the Hollywood studios had some bargaining power too. After all, Fritz Stronghold had threatened to quit the German market if The Prizefighter and the Lady were banned, and his superiors could easily have transferred him out of the country as soon as the decision was announced. Instead, they told him to remain. So he returned to work, defeated and demoralized. And it was around this time that the balance of power shifted discernibly to the German side. In November 1934, the German government raised the price of import permits for foreign movies. In November 1934, the German government raised the price of import permits for foreign movies from 5,000 to 20,000 Reichsmarks per title. The representative of the American studios quickly paid a visit to Dr. Seeger's subordinate in the propaganda ministry and said that a compromise needed to be reached. They showed him a series of statistics to prove that both parties would benefit from a lower fee, and the following month the fee was adjusted to 10,000 Reichsmarks. In 1935, the studios encountered more difficulties. 50 of their movies were permitted in Germany, a decent number, but once again, an MGM movie was banned for unknown reasons. The movie in question was a musical that had promised to do very well in Germany, titled The Merry Widow. Fritz Stronghold sent his employee, the nephew of the German forest minister, to meet with Dr. Seeger about the case, and Seeger explained that the film had been banned on account of its director, Ernst Lubitsch. The MGM representative asked whether the problem was that Lubitsch was a Jew, and Seeger refused to say. In 1936, the American studio's business dealings in Germany reached a critical level. The censors rejected dozens of films, sometimes giving vague reasons. The cast was unsatisfactory. The story was silly. Sometimes giving no reasons at all. The smaller companies, Warner Brothers, RKO, Disney, Universal Pictures, and Columbia Pictures, had all left Germany by this point, and only the three largest companies, MGM, Paramount, and 20th Century Fox. In 1936, the American studio's business dealings in Germany reached a critical level. The censors rejected dozens of films, sometimes giving vague reasons. The cast was unsatisfactory. The story was silly. Sometimes giving no reasons at all. The smaller companies, Warner Brothers, RKO, Disney, Universal Pictures, and Columbia Pictures, had all left Germany by this point, and only the three largest companies, MGM, Paramount, and 20th Century Fox, remained. By the middle of the year, these three companies had managed to have a combined total of only 8 pictures accepted by the censors, when they really needed 10 or 12 each just to break even. The new American Trade Commissioner in Berlin, Douglas Miller, sent an urgent report to his superiors in Washington, D.C., in which he explained the reality of the situation. It would be unfortunate for German-American relations if our motion picture companies no longer feel that they have any possibility of selling German films. Alright, just stop it right there.